Wonder Beirut is a multi-part project. It has three parts in the Wonder Beirut project. The story of a pyromaniac photographer, postcards of war, and latent images. It's a project we started in 1997 and ended in 2006. We begin this project because we found in a lot of places after the end of the Lebanese civil war, a lot of postcards representing the region and mostly Lebanon and the Riviera at that time, representing places that in a way were disappeared and were destroyed by bombs during the wars, or destroyed because of all the reconstruction projects. And so we were seeing those images and wondering how to send those postcards. Would I send this postcard to someone today, and what will it represent? And there was this moment where there was this nostalgia about those 60s that everyone was telling us about before the civil wars, and the future. And our present, the future where we're gonna rebuild this nation, and our present, the moment where we had to live this after-war period, in a way was not very concrete. We didn't know what to do with that moment. And so we had this impression that this moment was telling us, like, you have to forget everything, you have just to go to something else, and to put the Lebanese civil war between brackets. And this was very strange for us. So we thought about having this character, Abdallah Farah, who was a photographer that did those pictures. And those pictures was served to do those postcards that we all find today. And Abdallah was a fictional character because we wanted him to be the same person, to have taken this picture during the 60s, and little by little, to make them conform to what he was living during the civil wars, burn them.
Wonder Beirut, the story of a pyromaniac photographer, is an attempt to tell our history. It's a kind of chronology of our history. It is based on several processes where we physically are destroying a picture, but in the same time building one closer to our perception, I would say. So it's this double movement that by destroying something, you are making it closer to what you are seeing and generating something new. So it's also a photographic approach, meaning that it's how the negative by itself is interacting with this extreme light, which is fire, with different heats, with several techniques of destruction. In the same time, it is very precise in the first process, where we were going back to the newspaper, taking all kinds of elements and notes to have the exact chronology of the event, and trying to transpose it into what we call the historical process. We decided to focus on the Battle of the Hotels. There are three major battles of the hotels between 75 and 76, where Abdallah Farah went back to the newspaper, had the exact event, and tried to transcript it in the destruction of his own negative. And each day was taking again one picture of the process. So this is why you have these strips, according, for example, 9 days of battles. So you have day by day but of course it's an accumulation.
It was an attempt, in a way, to chronicle those years and to understand how images can be affected by war. We were not interested to show how images of war, because we are only interested to show what we live today, our present, how we can deal with this present. But the fact that Abdallah, our character, would burn his images, the images that he produced at a moment, was very interesting for us. And we had this feeling that images are affected by war. And first the idea was to produce and to distribute postcards So we did postcards of war, where we edited like thousands of postcards and give them to people or show them in exhibition where people could take them. And we really wanted this to happen, like to be able to produce images that people could send and could feel that they are closer to what they live, that postcards, ideal postcards. And in those ideal postcards you have all those nostalgic things that we, Khalil and me, we don't really like. We don't feel that nostalgia is something that we have to relate to. We have to think more about what to do today. How do we live today? What images that are we producing today, and why are we showing those images?
Latent Images is the third part of the Wonder Beirut project. It came from a very strange practice that we had at that time in Lebanon. We were taking pictures without developing them. It was something quite bizarre. Maybe it was a very strange feeling that we had at that time, that we were producing images that were part of a flux, and we want to be outside this flux. Little by little, we start to think about our practice and notice that it was linked to a very strong feeling that we had at that time, is that being surrounded by latency. Latency is something that exists that does not appear in its visibility at a certain moment, meaning that it is something that exists but that the condition of their visibility is not there. So little by little we attribute all these works to our character Abdallah Farah.
It happened in a very organic way. So we had those roles that we were not developing, and we wanted to remember what we had shot, so we were just writing on the roles. And then we thought about it, thought like, it's strange. Of course, it was a moment of argentic photography. And so in argentic photography, you don't really know what you have taken as a photography. There's a moment of this latency where images are not revealed. And we were questioning a lot our images at that time, and thinking like, what do we do? What kind of images are we producing? And we thought about writing those images, and but describing them in a very precise way. So maybe it can evoke something. So for us to read them again, and maybe for people when they read them. After that, we started. Like thinking of Abdallah Farah's life as a character, that we built his history. So we had his family life, his personal life, and the rest was more close to us. Like he was living in our district, in our building. He would go in our house. Were the places where we would go all to, and we would shoot a lot of things that we were interested in. There was also photographic experimentation and a small part of his personal life without developing them. And we did that for 10 years. And we had like this discipline of doing them every week, and little by little the roles were very present, and we didn't really know what to do with them. And we knew that we were not going to reveal them, but we were going to keep them. And until today, we never developed any role of this practice of Abdallah Farah that we called latent images. And we begin having the impression that we were doing like a diary, a chronicle of those years from 97 to 2006, but also a diary of Abdallah as a character that we were very close to.
What we are presenting here is a selection of 38 contact sheets. We call them contact sheets, meaning a film with its transcription into words and a design that look like a contact sheet. Of course, it's an editing, but in this editing, you nevertheless have a construction of a novel. It's like in a novel where you are building several layers. So there is the background, Beirut during the reconstruction, the history of photography, the evolution of this character, the evolution of our neighborhood, the evolution even of the medium and also of the event. the Pope visit in Lebanon, or Chirac, the Dragon of Rabiat, that was suddenly focusing on the newspaper. So these are some events that we went and took picture of it. But this was also something we were feeling. Why are we going to develop them? There was a pleasure of taking picture and not the necessity to seeing them.
Those roles are saying a possible narrative, but there are other possibilities too. And we like the fact that we can think about events that are saying stories that we call anecdotes, like stories kept secret, small stories that are not the official history, the things that we know, that you could follow and maybe understand more what were those years and what was our life those years in Lebanon. And it's very strange to hear them because it's so different, or to read them. It's so different today from what we were going through in the 90s, end of the 90s till 2006.
Abdallah's story is very close to ours. It's a character that I invent, and his practice is based on our practices. So during the war, we were facing sometimes lack of chemicals. This kind of effect, we transpose it to the story and the fiction of Abdallah Farah. So he stopped developing because of a lack of chemicals, meaning that he cannot process his pictures. But he had this pleasure of taking picture. Taking picture is something that comes from a very bizarre movement. You are forced to taking images. Their visibility and the condition of their visibility are not always there. And in the same way, when the project stopped in 2006, it was during the war of July. At that moment, Abdallah Farah felt that he cannot keep his images latent. Abdallah and us were facing a new strategy where suddenly we have to go out of this latency and start to produce new images, new kind of images, because we were feeling that our territory was shrinking and we had to face other strategy to keep our territory vivid.
Why did we invent Abdallah Farah as a character? We were first very interested by the fact that as filmmakers and artists, we could make those two practices intervene. So we thought about having a character, exactly the same type of characters that we build when we are writing a script, and to have him like in our art practice and to see how we can deal with him. We liked this idea of having a kind of alter ego, maybe older than us, having other way of dealing with photography that we were questioning, that we don't do a lot of images, Khalil and me, without putting them in a context, in installations. He was someone who would use traditional photography, and in our relation with him, we would try to question this traditional photography. And in a way, we get used to him. For years, we were in his mind, like which kind of images he would take, what is happening in his life. So we constructed, like we construct a character for a film, but it was 10 years of having him with us. Usually you do your script and then you film and it's done. Here we were with Abdallah, taking his images, thinking about his possible love affairs, his mother, his practice, and it was a very intense moment for us. It was a moment where we were taking a lot of pictures in the city also, because it was a whole reconstruction moment, and so we were always thinking about how he would take them, which angle he would have, and so it's not because we wanted to put fiction and reality or this kind of stuff, but also because we wanted to fictionalize this character and see what relation we can have as artists in this filmic process.